Chris, I had a terrible bet. I backed Djokovic to win the US Open. He's gone out in round 3, I think. Terrible bet. I backed him to win the Olympics, which is great. But today, terrible bet. So I want you to make me feel better from your historical days of betting seriously. Give me some stories. Make me feel better. 140 quid on Djokovic. Terrible. Tell me, let's start. What was the worst day punting you've had?
I couldn't give you the worst day, the worst week. So I think around...
That's even better.
Around 2016, no, 2006, 206, whatever you want to call it. I saw this like big edge on the draw bars at Wolverhampton racetrack. And I'd been betting all year. It was the end of the year. It was between Christmas and New Year. And I was like, I had a target in my mind of what I wanted to win that year on Betfair. And I was like, okay, so I think I was betting every race to win or lose £3,000 at that time. And I said to myself, I really want to go over this threshold I had in my mind. There's a huge draw bars at Wolverhampton Racecourse. I can't remember whether it was the inside draw or the outside draw, but it was a bias one way or the other.
Seems important.
And I said, so let's just assume it was the inside. And I said, I'm just going to lay the top horse 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the draw, and combined to lose 15 grand every race. And that was kind of what I decided for that week. Because I worked out, if you'd been doing this for like the last 8 weeks on your weather at Wolverhampton, you'd have made a fortune. It was like a huge bias.
So sorry, you went from like your normal was 3,000 exposure.
I think it was maybe 3 or 4, something like that.
And this 1 week you went 5-fold. Let's go to 15.
Yeah, let's just push this thing through.
Is that because you were behind schedule?
No, I just had in mind, I want to win this amount this year. I need to get to that level. I want to get to that level. I've had a great year.
Oh, okay.
Let's just take a punt on it.
Right.
And then what happens is the draw bars seem to go the other way. End of the week, 70 grand down. Gone.
Whoa. £70,000 1 week. What was do you remember what did it start? Was it like 10 grand a day? Was there a particular day where you like, I mean.
So obviously you're laying collectively the 4 inside draws. I think there's normally like 12 or 14 runners a race. So a lot of races you're winning, but then you're like minus 15,000 on the ones you're losing. And also back then, at that time, I wasn't that sophisticated in how I was putting the money down. There were probably traders jumping in front of Malays because there was such big stakes going on. It was absolutely absurd. But I was betting at a level that, you know, I haven't bet since. I mean, it was just absurd, really. But I was just trying to push because I thought there's such a big bias. I'm just going to do this. So I don't know whether there was any particular day where I lost the most, but I just remember at the end of the week thinking, I'm never doing that again. It was like a huge lesson learned.
Wow.
It's like you've just got to stick to the plan. Never, ever deviate. Like if you're going to gamble professionally, have a plan. Do not deviate from the plan. Never get greedy. And obviously at that point, I got greedy. I thought there's a huge bias. I'm just going to exploit it. And it just went against me.
I mean, my having 100 quid on Djokovic to win the US Open doesn't seem quite as bad, but also I would never claim that was a professional focused bet that I had. But I do remember that era because was that around the time I remember Betfair used to send you all sorts of perks, and we got a helicopter to Goodwood. Was it Goodwood? And there was one chap, I mean, lovely guy, he might even be watching this, but one chap was so full of confidence on the helicopter ride in. And I don't know his figure, but on the way back, 8 hours later, I remember he was in tears.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing is that gambling can get you like that. If you're not, you know, you can build up funds and just lose it in an instant if you get greedy. And And it's a huge lesson. I think if I hadn't done that, I probably, I may not have carried on going the next, sort of almost 20 years since, because that's a huge lesson to learn. Don't deviate from the plan.
Knowing you as well as I do, that really does surprise me that you allowed such a deviation.
I think there's also a huge level of confidence in that you're betting with money you've already won. So it wasn't like I'd lost money I'd earned somewhere, money that, was borrowed or anything like that. This is just money sitting in the Betfair account that was, you're playing with numbers. And I think back then, I think a lot of it was just, it didn't seem like real money. Like if you've got £100 in your pocket, that's in cash, that's real money. If you've got just like a number in your Betfair account and it drops from whatever it is, £70,000, it's like, you can make that back if you have a system.
So that's fun. Do you remember what your Betfair balance said in that top right corner at the most ever? Do you remember what that number was at its peak?
Well, I used to keep a lot of money in there, so yeah. I mean, there would always be back then. There would always be like six figures in the balance. I mean that's just what you do if you're regularly betting. So 3,000, 4,000 or whatever it was a race. You've got to have that in case you have a run where 10 races go against you and you lose 40,000. That can happen. So.
I can sense your reticence to talk about the good numbers, but you're perfectly happy talking about the bad numbers. But I'm going to force the issue. What was your best single day, or your best single week, or your best single period where you thought that's all right?
I think in one race, remember at Lingfield racetrack when I was doing the paddock stuff, and I think I was laying a race to win 4,000. So what would happen is you'd take the horses you're going to lay, and you'd lay. So say you had two horses you're laying, you'd keep laying the horses until you're minus 4,000 on both of them. So if both of them become an odds-on shot, obviously you win more than 4,000 if those two horses lose. And there was one day so what would happen was back then I was just kind of blindly putting into an old sort of PDA computer thing, and my opinions looking at the horses, and then that would go back on the mobile network to the computer at home that would then place the bets automatically to lose, say, £4,000 collectively on the race. So I would just go through and, put in the information for each horse. But you don't really know what the odds of the horses are. You just know that the ones that come across badly, you're going to lay collectively to lose £4,000 or whatever it happened to be. So what I did all that. I then go to like the lounge bit to watch the race on TV after looking in the paddock. Refreshed this sort of, I think it was Betfair Lite or something like that. I didn't even have a mobile app, and saw that it was like 16,500 to win. I'd win if those two horses lost, because one was odds on, and the other one was like 5 to 2 second favourite, and then the next horse was like 16 to 1 or something like that. So it was like ended up like I guess sort of a 4 to 1 shot that I'd put £4,000 on, which you wouldn't normally do traditionally, but because those two horses look so bad in the paddock, you're like, that's how it panned out.
Yeah.
And then lo and behold, the other horse won. It was like 16,500 in one race. So that's the biggest single win.
20,000 swing in the course of 2.5 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, it was crazy times. It was before I did trading, before there was consistent profits. So things would just go up and down like a yo-yo back then.
It's crazy because, you take it in your stride, but just here, and it's all part of the process. And like you say, you've got the funds, and it's percentages of this funds, and it doesn't matter on an individual basis. You look back in a year and but that must still have triggered something pretty exciting? I mean, you know, what was that like?
What, to win or to lose?
Yeah, to see yourself to win, to watch a race, see that horse come home, and instead of losing 4,000, you're winning 16. You
So
stop
I think,
right there. You go straight.
having refreshed it and seeing what the odds of the horses were, which I didn't know when I sort of transmitted the information, I was like, well, this one's got no chance. Because I suppose, if there was say a 7-race card, I would be laying the ones I didn't like every race. So in theory, you'd expect you'd lose one and win one and lose. So it was kind of up and down. But normally it would be like you'd win or lose $4,000. You wouldn't have such a big margin. I think that particular day, where I won just over 16 on that horse, the whole day was like $25,000 win. So the other ones were winning as well. That was a crazy day.
Wow.
Normally it kind of, you're waiting for the last race, you kind of won 3, lost 3, and it's all kind of down to the last race whether you win or lose. But some days you go on a good run, a lot of them come in, other days terrible, all 7 lose.
So do you know what sort of absolutely reasonable if you say no, but do you know what sort of margin you were making? But like, it sounds like huge turnover. Like, do you know what sort of margin you were making in a year?
Margin's a hard thing to kind of, I think people sort of say, well, if I stake £10 and I make, sort of, or I stake £100 and I make £10, I'm making 10% return. But it really depends on the odds. So you'd expect to make a far higher return on if you just back 33 to 1 shots than you would if that should be 20 to 1. You're going to make a huge return on investment. Whereas if you're backing up even money shots, or even take it to extreme, if you're backing 1.01 shots, if every single one won, you're making a 1% return. So it's kind of hard to work it out. But I think in terms of what I was trying to do was always be around an even money shot on racing. So you're kind of laying half the field. It didn't always work like that in the paddock, but that would kind of, and on that long term, I was making about 4%.
Right. Yeah.
Long term.
Yeah. That's a good number. Right. So, so 70,000 in a week. Did anything come sort of close? Is that just like a standout? Were there any other that sort of? I've got tons that stick in. I doesn't compare, but I backed a boxer who I watched on Sky Sports on a Saturday night. I backed him to win on points. He won the British title, split decision. I think might even be unanimous decision. Gave him the belt in the ring. I watched the broadcast. I saw my balance increase by £300. The broadcast ended and I went to bed. Woke up the next morning, money's gone. Look online. An hour after the fight, the judges realised they'd miscalculated the scorecards. Bookmakers resettle and take the cash back. My balance was down 300. I could have withdrawn the money.
That's worse than losing, isn't it? That's worse than just losing the money straight.
But it's like we were talking about the other day about being the difference between a professional punter, you having to being in a position to swallow 70,000 in a week, as opposed to being a recreational punter, like a serious but still recreational punter like I was, and that 300 quid that was there and then taken away, that stuff. And as a recreational punter, you have loads of those. You remember, those.
I mean, that's just gutting to have been paid into the account and then have it. But then what can the bookmaker do? They've got to pay the other result, haven't they?
Yes, and also morally, if I had taken the money out, that's not the honest thing to do because the decision was read wrong or whatever it was. The bet was I don't know. So morally, perhaps I've got no case to say, actually, I should have taken the money out. But after that, I did change my practices. And whenever I had a serious win, I withdrew the money immediately. Yeah. It's like you say, you learn from a big burn.
Yeah, that is. So would you have given the money back if you'd withdrawn it?
I mean,
you'd never be able to bet with them again, would you?
Yeah. So, I mean, on the record, 100%, I would have given all the money back. Off the record, no, I wouldn't have given the money back.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah. What about do you have any sort of like do you bet recreationally as well?
Yeah, so yeah, I either log in and I put 50p or £1 on for a bet on a World Cup football game or something that I have absolutely no professional opinion on,
Yeah,
systematic opinion, or if there's a system involved, then I bet whatever the system says.
properly. But
Yeah,
that's it. So that's it. This it's the recreate the fit. I can't believe you bet 50p. That's amazing. The fun bets where you just have an opinion on something. It's still fun to be right or to be wrong, but be close. To still fun, even when it's 50p or a pound.
yeah. I mean, it's a different style of gambling. I don't think. Yeah, if I didn't have an actual system telling me that I knew before I logged into the account I was going to win long term doing that, why would you bet more than 50p or a pound? Why? It wouldn't. There
Well,
wouldn't be any reason to.
I had an old colleague of mine who had a theory that he simply could not understand anyone enjoying sport without having some financial exposure in it. And it doesn't need to be significant. Just if you're watching sport, you must have an opinion about it to get the most of enjoyment out of it. If you've got an opinion about it, back your opinion, and it enhances the experience. And it's kind of a good
Yeah, I
spin.
think some things. So, like, I don't know, sort of World Cup cricket or football. You just want England to win. So I think that is exciting regardless of the bet. And probably like a lot of the time, not in cricket, but in football, if you're having a bet, you bet on England to lose, and it would just be it'd be a miserable experience to watch, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean, I don't know if I should admit this. With England football, I have an emotional hedge, and every single tournament I lay them, and I never tell anyone. Delete this part, but I do that every tournament because I hate that feeling. The expectation, it gets so high, and you believe it every 4 years, every 2 years. There's always reasons, and then
Well, they're always bad value, aren't they?
yeah, well, that's the other thing. There was a big thing. What were they? 4-1 a couple of months ago, 3-1 in places or something. I don't know. I mean, they nearly did it though.
5 to 2, I think, was shortest. Yeah, mad pricing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, but yeah. So sometimes you get lucky with these ones as well. But yeah, so it's funny that you can be a professional punter, a serious punter, but it is those fun bits that still draw you in, log in, couple of quid here. Yeah.
Not a couple of quid, a quid.
Exactly. Keep it under control. Keep it when the fun stops, stop. Brilliant. All right. Well, I do feel a little bit better. I'm going to go and put £100 on Djokovic to win the Australian Open, and let's do this again in January when I cash in.
Excellent.
Cheers, Chris.